Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another uh, ride through the Onshape cloud. But today we're going to focus on one of the aspects of Onshape that makes it pretty unique compared to any other CAD system, and it's the ability to branch. So we can start a design and kind of go off in a different direction without doing a save as and things like that, because Onshape really doesn't have files. So we do this branching. Should we like what we see, we can always merge it back in with the main idea that we were working with. So this is as far as the PowerPoints are gonna go for today. But I've used this example before. I'm just gonna touch on it briefly and then we'll get into something else. But this is to highlight, one of the aspects and being able to leverage branching. So here I have two parts created. And the idea is, we know we need this type of product, but how should we fasten these two parts together? So this is a really good opportunity to use branching. And in most systems, you do a save as, right? You do a save as this, and you'd work on that. And if you had a bunch of people doing it, you do a bunch of save as, and you have them all work on them together or separately, and then try to figure out which has the best idea. So it's kind of an ideating type of an approach. We're going to come up with different ideas. So here, let's look at our history tree. And what we see is the main trunk of our history tree. All the features and everything that we see right here are along this blue line in history. But then we create a version, and from that version, we make a series of branches. And what I did is basically deal this out to a number of different people and say, give me your best idea on the best way to connect these two parts together. And as they're working on the branches, they're kind of separate, right? The same but separate. So they can do whatever they want to come up with these different ideas, and then we can review those. So that's really at the stage we're at, and we're picking this up at this point, is they've finished their different branches and their ideas, and then we're going to go through and take a look at them. So the first idea to connect these two parts is to make a slot. So if I select on the slot in the branch, it goes to that branch, and what we see is that we actually made a little cutout here and slide the first part into the second part. So that was a good idea. I'll give him his props for that. The second idea here is let's use welding. Let's just weld the two parts together. So if we look at it here, we can see that, just made a couple of little chamfers there so that we can put a nice weld bead in there. The third idea is let's use screws to fasten these together. So I'm doing a design review right here. Typically, if you had a bunch of save as, you'd be, erasing memory because these parts always have the same name and they're different, created differently or modified differently with these different ideas. So that's why we have to mess around with RAM and all this kind of stuff. Here we don't, right? It's the same. It's just the way branching works. But here we're putting in, and we want to fasten these two parts with screws. And finally, the last idea is, what if we just make this a single part? Instead of two parts, make it a single part and just make it a casting, a mold, or a stamping, or however. So those are the different ideas that we have. And then now I can determine, if we go back to our main idea where we started off, we can kind of see which ones do we want to include. And I like that slot idea. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say merge that in with the main idea. So I do a merge, and now the main idea, so you notice we're still on that. We can see the slot's been included. But the thing is, I also like the screw idea as well. So maybe we can do the slot and the screws. So I'm going to take this screw idea up here and say, let's merge that in as well. And now we've got the slot and the screws built in, right? So basically the slot was a neat idea, but the screws keep it from sliding around. So this is just a real quick example of how we can use branching. In this case, using it to generate a bunch of different ideas. We can review those very, very easily by clicking through those and then pick the ones that we want to use going forward. So that's the first idea of using branching. The next one is going to be similar. What we're going to be working with here is an office chair. And this office chair, you'll notice that it can't articulate. It's kind of a rigid link here. So we can't really lean back in the chair. And so we want to create a new design that would allow us to do something like that. So I'm going to go over here to our history tree, and we can see, all the features that we've created. I'm going to go and create. So the way Onshape works is that parts and assemblies are always dynamic. I can always go in and start changing things, right? Just like if you're using a Word document, you can always call up the Word document and add things to it or erase things from it. So really, if we do branching, it's going to want a version, a moment in time that it can branch off of. So why would you do a version? Maybe our part has progressed from maybe a prototype stage to being an in-design stage. So we could put a version there, which indicates this is the end of prototyping, and now going forward, we're doing more design work. Or when we do a release, we create a version there and say now it's released. So lots of different reasons to using branching to kind of indicate moments in time when it's significant to the development of the part. So I'm going to create a branch right now, because right now we just have our general idea. So I'm going to come over here and say, let's make a new branch, and we'll just call it new design. So you'll see in the tree here, it's made this new design. Now I can continue working on this part, but I can go back to this point in time and say, this is where I want to branch off from. So I'm going to just right click on this and say, let's create a branch. And this branch could be, let's say, movable back. And we'll create that branch. So you notice now we've created a branch. Again, we have to create the branch from the version that we created. And now we have this movable back branch that we can work on. So I can do whatever I want with this movable back and kind of decide how I want to change this part so that it can articulate. So the main idea is still there, right? Someone could still be working on that, making some changes, changing the wheels, making it a leather seat or whatever. I'm going to be working on this portion. So one of the things I do is I'm just going to take this part, I'm going to call him up here. And what I want to do is kind of break him into two parts. So I've done that ahead of time so we don't have to go through all the CAD portion of that. But what I did is I kind of used that geometry to make a couple of other parts. So here are those two parts. So you notice now, this will be able to articulate, it'll be able to move back. One of the things that I'll do is I'll make an assembly out of this. So this is just still in the part studio where we're creating geometry, right? You can tell that from the menus across the top. We can do extrudes and lofts and chamfers and rounds and all that type of stuff. Then when I really want to place these two together, because these are kind of fixed at this point, I'm going to say, let's just put this into an assembly, and now I can add different joints between here. So I have a pin joint on here, so I can take this and articulate it, right? So really that's all I did is take those two parts and just say now, instead of having them, kind of rigidly put together, let's put a pin joint or a revolute joint between those. At this point, I'm going to continue working on this because this design up here is wrong. There really should be metal across here because the back of the chair has to go against there. And we don't really need this back part here. So I'm going to have to make some changes to that. But in the meantime, I want someone else to put some kind of a pneumatic piston or something here so that when we lean back, it just doesn't fall over, right? We have some rigidity to this. So this is a good opportunity for me to go in and make another branch. So I'm going to say, I'm going to make another, so I'll make a version here. I'm going to ask my friend Nick to help me out. So I'm just going to call it like Nick's version. So now we have that. And then from there, I'm just going to create a branch, right? So now we have another solid moment in time in the history where we can branch off. And I'll just say, I'll just call it Nick, all right? So far, I'm the only one working on this, but we have another version up here for Nick. I'm going to go back here, take a look at our assembly, and I'm going to share this with Nick. So we can work on this at the same time. And originally, the original design, someone could be working on that as well. So all three people could be working at the same time. Again, that's another really, really unique capability of Onshape is real-time collaboration. But let's go in and say, I want to share this. and we'll share it with, if I start to type in a name, shows me a list of people in my company. We have a couple different Nicks. I'll say, let's share it with him. We'll give him edit capabilities, and he can export it, make comments, and things like that. So I'm going to say, let's share that with Nick. So right away, you notice here, he's added to the list of people who can see this. So other than me, right now, only Nick can see this, and we've given him edit rights. So he gets an email. And so here's Nick. He gets the email, he clicks on it. It's a link saying, Bill has invited you to share in this part. I'm going to say, he signs in. And if we look at documents, we can see that he has the part there. So he's going to click on this chair design that I've shared with him. And we'll have him go and take a look at, let's go over and take a look at the chair mechanism. We can go over here and say, let's look at this. So I'm going to actually, Nick and I aren't co-located, right? We're not in the same place. So I'm going to say, can you add a piston? And I'll direct this to Nick. We'll send that. So Nick over here also has ability, and he sees this pop up. Say, can you add a piston? And he says, sure. And I can see him reply over here, his reply. So I'm going to tell him, work on the Nick branch. Add a piston. And obviously, he sees that. So he knows what to do. Obviously, I could call him on the phone, but it's really kind of nice here where we can just text back and forth. We can send each other images or anything else. You know, it's just like regular texting, but it's built in to Onshape. Really nice little tool. So Nick's going to go over. He doesn't really need to be texting me back anymore. And he's going to look at the branching. And he's going to look for the Nick branch. So now he has that. And he's going to go over here and say, all right, he wanted me to add a piston to this. So Nick's going to go and say, let's insert an assembly. And we'll browse around for things that he has. And he has access to this little piston over here. So he's going to say, let's bring that in. And we'll put it right there. So kind of take this. Now he has to assemble it in, which should be an easy thing to do. We're just going to come over here and say, let's just do, now because we're in an assembly, we can use all these different types of joints. I'm going to say, let's use like a pin joint or a revolute joint. Onshape is really easy for us to put components together. It uses a lot less picks than anybody else that I've ever used. And we're going to say, let's put that over onto this face right here. And we can flip him. And then let's do an offset because it's still touching and maybe we want to center it a little bit more. So move it over like maybe 4 millimeters and we'll say okay. So now we have that part of the piston set. We'll kind of drag this back a little bit, maybe turn them this way. And now we want to connect the other part to here. So I'm going to use a cylindrical joint. Same kind of idea. I'm just going to say take the center of this and line it up with the center of this. Say okay. And it stays aligned, but they also stay along centers this way. And if I grab this and start articulating it, we can start moving our chair around here. So Nick's kind of done with his portion here. And what I'm going to do is go back to me. And as I mentioned, I'm going to go back and make some changes to this part because this isn't really looking right for us. So let's go in and say, let's go back to the branch here that I'm working on, which is this guy. And I'm going to look at the part itself. So I want to change some geometry. And this is really the guy that I want to change. So I'm going to say, let's change this sheet metal. And we want to keep the metal here. So here's a list of the different portions I said. I'm going to say, let's keep this guy and let's remove this guy. And then we also need to put some bends in here. So I'm going to say, let's put a bend right here and right there. We say OK. And now we've got it set correctly. If I grab this guy, well, actually we can be in our assembly now. This is the way our assembly works. He articulates fine. If we go back to Nick's assembly, remember he was working on a totally different branch, right? So he still sees this. Oh, let's change this from a slider. And we'll change it to a cylindrical joint. Now he articulates the way we want. So we can see our pistons working here in Nick's world, in his branch. And then I don't see his work here yet, but I've at least changed this part, right? So the next thing I want to do is substitute this in what I've done for the main chair idea. So go back to the chair mechanism, or the main chair with the part here. And we don't need this part anymore. So I'm going to select on him and say delete. He goes away. Now I want to bring in what I've created. So I'm just going to say, let's insert. We'll say an assembly. I'll say that mechanism assembly I was working on. And we'll put it maybe right here. So now I just need to replace this, just fit it on the pole here. So we can just do a real simple, let's just do a fasten. Actually, I'd probably put a pin joint there so we can rotate, but do that. Then over here, want to put them in the center of this guy. And then we need to rotate him. Rotate it about the Z-axis, like 90 degrees. So now I put, this is the work that I needed to do, right? I designed these two links and I put it into the chair. But Nick over here has got a version, and once I take a look at it and I say, hey, that looks pretty good. I want to incorporate that piston idea into my chair here. So this is where I'm going to come back and go back to our history tree here. I'm working on this. I like Nick's idea. So like we did before, I'm just going to say, let's merge that in. So now we can kind of drag this guy back. This guy articulating, but one of the things you'll notice is that this guy isn't attached. So I'm going to move him up here a little bit. And we'll say, let's fasten him to the back of the chair, or to the back of our mechanism there. So we'll say from there. You notice I can create these joints just with 2 picks. Usually you got to constrain, all 3 degrees of freedom or 2 of the 3 degrees of freedom. So now we have a chair that articulates, right? So now we can lean back, put our feet up, be a little bit more comfortable. But this is just my idea, right? And what I've come up with so far in my little branch out here. If we go back to the main idea over here, here's the main chair that they're working on. They don't see any of the work that I've done yet. But maybe they're still working on some things. So I'm going to go over here. Let's go to the chair. And we'll say, let's change, I don't know, change some colors in the chair. We'll make it, obviously I could be doing some geometric changes and things like that, but we'll just say, we're just changing the chair here. So what I'm trying to accentuate here is that design can continue on in the main product, and then we can continue on with our branching and do things there. So if we go and take a look at the chair, here's the chair assembly, but now I want to incorporate the new mechanism here. So again, I just right mouse button, click on this, and I'm going to say merge in. So we've changed our chair, at least here the color of it, but look at that. It's all updated. And again, I can articulate our chair. I can make a drawing of this. I had a drawing of the old one if I wanted to do that. So you can make drawings of things at different points in time. I have two different products, basically, right? So I can have both. But again, it's kind of showing you the power of branching, being able to have, and think about what I was doing here. I was kind of taking the role of maybe 3 different people. And technically, they can all be doing this at the same time. This demo would have been, the presentation, I should say, would have been only 5 minutes long if that was the case. And we talk to a lot of people that are using, your typical CAD systems that are out there. And, one of the first questions we'll say is, would you like to be able to collaborate on things? And they go, no, the way we have things structured, we don't really collaborate at all. We don't need to. And the thing is the reason they don't collaborate is because they can't. Nobody else can do real-time collaboration and do this kind of branching. So the reason they don't is because they can't. So all I ask you, to the people who are listening, is keep your mind open. If you had this ability, would you use it? You don't have to, but you have the capability now, doing something in a different way that you've never been able to do before. And you can take advantage of that and really compress the design cycle of your products.